Oh, am I? Oh, already recorded. Great. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Sorry about the slightly slow start. I'm going to be talking about 10 lessons learned as a Drupal entrepreneur. If you're looking for something else, obviously that's not in this room. And am I talking loud enough? I'm hearing, yes? Okay. All right. Okay. So my name's Drew Gorton, and I, for many years, almost 15 years, ran a web firm based here in Minneapolis called Gorton Studios. And a lot of what I'll be talking about are things that I learned over the course of that time. And so I've got 10 specific lessons that I'm going to be sharing, but I want to talk a little bit about the backstory and how I got to this place, and then about a number of very specific principles. So oddly enough, this journey for me started when I lived in Japan. And so I lived in Japan in the late 90s, and I taught English to high school students. And this is actually a picture of a bridge in a park that I would walk through on my way to the train station in Kojo-kon and Takaoka. And when I was in Japan, one of the things I struggled with was the fact that here I am teaching this really dry, boring subject to high school kids. And I remembered myself being a high school kid and having to learn some language that I didn't care about, but it was a requirement, and not really enjoying that. I mean, whatever, it was fine. But fighting that as a teacher was just like, no, actually, this is relevant, this is something. At that time, the internet and the web were really becoming available to people. And so what I ended up doing was setting up exchanges with my students and kids in different countries. So they were making email communications as well as like little web pages for each other and such with kids in Northern Ireland and in Norway and Finland. And all of a sudden, this thing came alive for them. And this really dry subject of English was all of a sudden a way to communicate with that really cute girl or guy that was in the web page that they could see, and they could write each other emails and such. And it was amazing. And I saw this technology really just like capturing these kids. And I knew that I wanted to be a part of this. I saw that this was going to change the world, and it was going to allow amazing things. Like the ability for us, we all take for granted now, to communicate with people regardless of who they are, where they are, what they believe, what they look like, age, gender, etc., and actually interact with folks that are so far away from you and share thoughts and ideas, collaborate on software, is amazing stuff. And so I knew that when I came back from Japan, and I was going to no longer be an English teacher, because I wasn't really qualified to be an English teacher, I just spoke English. Upon coming back, I got started in web development. And before too long, I found myself as a web developer at a .com startup. And it was interesting. I learned a lot of stuff. But I also, was aware of the fact that one of the things that essentially it was a classic .com startup that was didn't really have a business plan, didn't necessarily have a great product for the price, and it seemed like it would be a sinking ship to me. And so I, being young and headstrong, I just decided that it's time to go out on my own, right? I can do this better, right? And so I was an early rat off of a sinking ship. And there's a wonderful thing about that. It's like the American dream, right? This is sort of the idyllic, like go out, try something, find your way, and it's a really exhilarating experience. And it's very much like sort of portrayed as this wonderful thing. As you get into it a little ways, though, you once you sort of cut your safety ties, you might realize that actually the path to being successful on your own is actually fraught with some difficulties. There's a lot of rewards in it, but it starts to look a little bit more like a hazardous path through an unfriendly landscape. And so the things I'm talking about are things that really I wish I'd learned sooner in some cases, and still things that I probably, in fact, I definitely need to keep working on. So they're not unique to me at all. The 10 lessons I'll be talking about is definitely past, trodden by others. There are a lot of people in this room who would know how to exemplify or better say some of these things or give better examples of them. I might ask, as we get to questions and answers and such. But these, again, are things that I've really personally found to be really opening to me in how I can be better as a human being and be better as someone who's doing business in this space. So I'll talk about each principle, and then I'll try and illustrate it with a story as well, too, so that there's something a little bit more concrete. So the first thing I want to talk about is change is opportunity. It is always opportunity. If you are in business, and actually, sorry, before I jump there, I should ask, how many of you are in a management or leadership role in what you do right now? Cool. And how many of you think you might be there someday? Right? All right, cool. I hope that this is like useful for all of us. Anyways, leave that alone. So change always represents opportunity. And sometimes change sucks, right? Something bad happens, and you know, like our natural reaction is like, had it all figured out, guess that's all done. And it's easy to get into, to react to that in a negative way. But I think if you can manage to change your mindset about how you react to change and say, like, actually, something just changed, something new is possible. What is that thing? You'll go a lot further, a lot farther, a lot more successfully. One early example I had of this is when I started out on my own, I had a client that was really important to me. It was actually for a public television show. And so here I was by myself doing a website for this PBS syndicated series that was like amazing opportunity for me. It was great. We did this huge big website for them, and I really got to have it was like this sort of like my first big client. It was early in my career. It was really exciting. And went in, it's like that. They had that first season with a new website, and we had plans, and I had ideas about things in the next, and the show was canceled. I was like, oh no, this is the worst thing ever. Like all of the things that I wanted to do, and this security that this job and client represented, and this portfolio that it represented, was gone. That was like horrible. But I didn't realize at the time what happened there was that actually I knew one organization and maybe 10 or 15 people there that all I had worked with and had some sort of interactions with. And what happened to all of them, of course, they moved on to different places. And I didn't realize this at the time, but actually that series closing down was actually one of my greatest opportunities, because all of a sudden, within 6 months or something like that, all of these super talented people had landed other places, gone on to other things, and then they would remember, well, we've got to do some web stuff. Who should we hire for that? And that experience really was like very surprising for me. And I've seen it recur many, many times. When a door closes, others open. And that sounds really cheesy, but it's very true. Anytime there is change, there's opportunity. And sometimes change can be hard, but if you can discipline yourself to look for that opportunity, you can find ways to have something exciting happen on any given change. Another really important thing I learned along the way is to ask basic questions. And to be brave and be ignorant. It's okay. When you are in this industry, people bring you in because you have some presumed knowledge or expertise that they don't have. That's the way these things work, right? When you're building websites for clients, they assume that you can come in and do this thing. And so you come in with an expert's role, and sometimes, as an expert, it can be a little bit intimidating to admit you don't know something. But you should. And one of the most powerful things you can do in client meetings or in any others is to stop and ask really simple questions. Why? Why is one of my favorites. Why do you want this? Why do you do it that way? What is that acronym you keep saying? I don't know what that is. And to just put that out there, If you don't know it, you don't know it. If it's something about technology and you don't know it, that might be a little bit embarrassing, but would probably come out anyways. But almost every single time I've ever done this, it turns out those simple questions become the key to understanding and solving the problems at hand. Why are we doing this? What's the important thing here? Who cares about it? There's the who, what, where, when, why things. Really basic questions, and you can be delightfully ignorant and force people to explain things. Even if you think you understand it, forcing them to explain exactly why they think you need to do X, or this project has to include that, is always insightful. And it turns out, I don't think people ever thought less of me because I did this. I'm not sure, but I think, it's an incredibly powerful tool, and it's something it's like admitting you're vulnerable, right? I don't know everything. What is this? But by doing that, you both learn things very quickly, as well as demonstrate a willingness to collaborate, and that can be a powerful combination. Another one that can be a little bit hard as you're starting off on your own or early into this, or even if you've been doing it for a long time, is figuring out the money business, right? So money is one of the things that's really tricky, right? And how many people have struggled with how much they should charge for stuff? Really? Come on, not everybody. So my advice on this is to charge enough. And that is completely unqualified, right? There's not a lot of detail in that, or not of concreteness in that. But the story I'll share about this, when I started out, one of the things that I did for projects was I didn't want to track hours. I wanted only to just do something that was more valuable than what I would charge for it. So if I thought, client needs this, there's this kind of medium thing, I can sort of figure it out. You know what? I'm willing to do this. I don't know how long it'll take me. It's probably worth $5,000. I'll do it. I don't know. And I'll just work until it's done. And that, when you're by yourself, is an okay way of doing things. As soon as you involve team members, it gets a little bit more complicated. But that mindset, actually, I think, is still always a good thing to at least have somewhere. Like, if you are starting to architect something in your head or think about something that's $100,000 or $1 million or $10,000, and you can't quite justify why that organization would ever benefit from that, that's kind of a problem. At the same time, you never want to shortchange yourself. Like, how many of us like to eat food and sleep in a, you do, Matthew Chiff. That's great. I appreciate that. That's good. Right? All of us, money is handy stuff, and that's a really obvious obvious statement. But when you have more money, you have more opportunities. And if you're using your money wisely and being a good steward of that and doing good work, you should feel comfortable saying, no, it costs a fair amount for these kinds of things. You're worth it. Another thing that I learned, that I continue to learn, is the need to keep growing. And there's a statement so there's a platitude which is grow or die, which is one of those things that I, for a long time, was very skeptical of. I was like, if a company isn't growing, it's dying. And oftentimes I would see that interpreted as keep adding people. And I was actually very, very deeply skeptical of that. Like, more people is not necessarily growing. Growing should involve new opportunities or new skills or doing new work with new clients. There's a lot of ways. It's a very narrow interpretation of what growth is. However, over time, I think actually it is right in some ways. In order to keep doing new things and having new skills and having new projects and offering new services and such, that will eventually involve more people. And so I don't like the conclusion as being the the short version of the answer without understanding that you should keep improving your skills and giving new opportunities and all those kinds of things. But eventually that will involve new people as well. And one of the things that Gorton Studios, so those of you who don't know, like Gorton Studios built a product called NodeSquirrel. We sold that product to Pantheon, website management platform. I went with that and left Gorton Studios behind in that process, and put Gorton Studios in a bit of a bind. And Gorton Studios at the same time was already sort of starting to get wiggly around the edges. Everybody was trying to think about like what they wanted to do in the future, and effectively, I think we were root-bound. We hadn't grown enough. I think if we'd grown, we would have given more opportunities for our people to explore new things. So this is something that I think in hindsight I understand much better now. But keep growing. Keep improving what you can do. Keep improving what your team can do. Keep improving what the people around you can do. Another really, really important thing that I really, I think, deeply understand is that if you take care of the people around you, other things will take care of themselves, right? This actually, I think, is probably one that's relatively easy for those of us in the open source world. We're used to this sort of trust fall of, I don't know, I just give a little bit of code and I take some things and collaborate with these people that I don't quite know, and we're sharing, we're collaborating on code and things, and we have a sort of culture of sharing and transparency. But still, this can be hard to do at times. And so Todd this morning in the keynote talked a lot about this in terms of your internal team and working with your teammates in this way. This applies to everyone you interact with as much as you can. And so an example of this is one thing that I often did as Gorton Studios is spend a lot of time on the phone when people would call in when they had like some sort of ideas about stuff. And thinking back over time, actually some of our biggest clients ever came to us because a year or two earlier, I had spent an hour or two with them talking about what their ideas would be, what their projects could be, what their, what the flaws I saw in the plan that they were doing. And so many times I heard later on, how convenient, that was actually really instrumental in them, really instrumental in working with us. I never did it with that in mind. I always just did it as like, look, I'm okay talking to people. I'm pretty comfortable with it, right? But I didn't realize at the time that it was actually a powerful tool to make the business better as well. Just spending time treating people like the way you would like to be treated. As though that was someone, even if you don't know them at the moment you pick up the phone, do your best to think about them as a loved one. Or take care of them. Give them answers. Give them help. Be a good person. And it turns out, if you do that to the universe is pretty nice to you on the flip side. Another one that I think is relatively easy for us in the open source world is to be honest. It can be very hard, and there's sort of like the negative way of saying this: don't lie, the world is watching. But it turns out if you lie, eventually someone's going to figure it out. You're going to look not only like an idiot, but an untrustworthy idiot. And there are a few things, as Todd was saying, in the knowledge economy, more damaging or less damaging than a tarred reputation. If you don't know something, you got to say it. If you don't think that's the way it should be done, you got to say it. Especially in the day of, again, all of us work on the internet. We know that every keystroke is being recorded somewhere. The NSA's got a big file on all of us, right? Again, there's issues with that. But if you can find a way to behave as though you're always being observed, because you are, right? And even whether that be from sort of spy kinds of things, but just from the perspective of your coworkers. If you're a leader in your organization, the people you work with are watching you for cues. If you're not being honest about what you're doing, they'll pick up on it. You're not fooling anybody, right? So it's hard to always be honest. So we're all human beings. But the more you can do it, the better off you'll be. Saying no. You can't do everything. This can be hard, especially as you're starting out. Once you start doing something, the first thing you want to do is have enough money to be able to pay for those groceries and things. And so it's a temptation as you get started out to say yes to anything you can try and figure out. And that's actually probably a good idea. But once you realize you aren't good at something and you don't enjoy it, the more often you can say no to turn things down will give you the more opportunities to say yes to the right thing. None of us can do everything. We just can't. I mean, like, the world is full of opportunities. The world is all, there's a billion things out there that we can do at any given time. You're going to find success only by finding the things that you're able to focus on and do the best. Whether that's running, as an individual or as an organization, finding ways to say no to the right things is a really powerful tool to be able to say yes to the right things and do those really, 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 really well. As I realize I'm looking at my time here, I'm burning through this way faster than I thought I would. So we're going to have a lot of free time or a lot of time for questions and answers. Anyways. All right. The eighth thing I wanted to share was following passion. So if you are doing something you love, you will do it well, and your energy will carry you through the rough spots. As anybody knows that have started out, how many people have worked for themselves? How many, all roses, everyone? Right? No, there are rough spots. There are rough spots. But if you're doing what you love, it's enough to carry you through those rough spots, right? If you can figure out what you're passionate about and do that, you're going to be fine. You love solving these kinds of problems. You love working on those kinds of things. You like working with this kind of person. Whatever it is, find it. If you can do that, you're going to be tremendously successful. Your energy is going to carry you through. Another one that can be hard, if you approach the world with humility and a good attitude and whatnot, is to trust yourself. Surrounding yourself with good people, as Todd mentioned, is a really, find people who are better than you at everything. And you'll do really, really well. And it's certainly something I very much tried to do, and I think I succeeded at as well. But one of the things that I think can be harder is when you're surrounded by people who are so awesome and smart and talented, and you ask for their input on lots of things, is to actually take the time to ask your inner self and say, all right, got a lot of input. What should happen next? And to trust yourself in that. That one is, that one's trickier in some ways. But if you've made it to the place where you're sitting in this chair, you've got a lot of things you've learned through life. In the end, you have to make the right decisions. And that's beholden on all of us. And so, trust yourself. And the last slide I have, or the last thing I have, is to just do it. Because plans are never perfect. You will never get to a spot where you figured out everything. In order to succeed in life and work and business, all of these things, you have to leap. You have to go for it. You have to just take the next step. You have to jump. You'll never know if the other side is all perfectly planned out. And even if you did take the time to all perfectly plan it out, it's probably going to change when you're in the middle of the air. Act today. Go. Do it. And that is the 10 lessons I wanted to share in 5 minutes or less, apparently. It's the first time doing this in front of a live audience. Yeah.
Can we get more?
Yeah. Come on, Dan, you got some. There are a lot of people in here. Let's jump to questions.
Can you think of a sliding doors moment where if you had made the decision you almost did, everything would have been completely different?
Oh, yeah. Many. Yes.
One you remember?
You try not to.
Yes. Yes. I have one that's standing out sharply. In the, yeah. I think all of us probably have, if you walk through the story of your life and you look back and realize I took this class, or I, stopped for a drink here, or I met this one person, and wow, 5 years later it's what I do. It's patently obvious, like the little things you do in life can be deeply influential in the rest of your life in ways that can be sort of defy logic. Like I had no idea that was going to happen because I said hello to this person or whatever. Likewise, decisions have, those same kinds of consequences. And one of the things that so at Gorton Studios, I was surrounded by people who were better than me in all of the things that they did. And it was awesome. It was wonderful. And one of the things that taught me very well was to say, to leave it to the team to decide how to do things. Because experience taught me, like, if I weigh in and say the navigation should have 4 buttons and they should be yellow and blinky, it's probably bad advice in the first place. But the people who actually do that would actually have a better idea. The people who actually do the programming would have a better idea. And so I taught myself to defer to my team on almost all big decisions. In fact, I would say all big decisions. And it was the right decision. That was the right way to do projects. But I think it was the wrong way to run a business, fundamentally. Because it turns out I did actually have a special role in looking further ahead. And that's what I should have been doing more. And a place where I should have said, I have special knowledge, actually. I see this happening. I know where this is going to go. And I should have been more forceful about some of the things that I thought would happen that did happen. And been better about preparing ourselves for those kinds of things. Yeah. Other questions? Fastest talk ever. Cool. Well, I'm happy.
Maybe, do you want to talk a little bit about the whole Pantheon acquiring NodeSquirrel?
Sure. Yeah. Let's just have open Drew question now.
Yeah.
Now. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So Gorton Studios built a product called NodeSquirrel. It was a backup. It is a backup system for Drupal websites. It is now free. If any of you have any Drupal websites and would like, say, a backup of it, go sign up today and have it for free. It's nodesquirrel.com, and it's built into Backup and Migrate. So if your sites use Backup and Migrate, install it. If you don't use Backup and Migrate, install it. If you do, just go over to the NodeSquirrel tab, click, 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 click. You'll have an offsite backup. Hooray! Good. It's just a good thing to do. So we built this thing, and it came out of our expertise with the Backup and Migrate module in particular. But it was a little bit of a strategic distraction for a services company to have this product. And so I started sort of thinking about companies that I thought might like it. Turns out Pantheon was one of them. They agreed after some discussion. So they bought NodeSquirrel right before DrupalCon this year, actually. So it was the news of the Monday morning of DrupalCon, which was, what, a month or two ago or something like that. The twist in the plot for me was when they said, we like the technology, but we also want you. And I was really like, what? What are you talking about? I have a thing. It's got my name on it even. Like, what? What is this, like a negotiating tactic? That's silly. But I realized, actually, as we talked more about it, I was like, ha, 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 ha. Now let's get back to the serious talk, right? But as it came up again a couple more times, it's like, all right, well, describe the thing you would like me to do. And I realized, actually, as they described it, that, it was exciting and new. And that was something I very much needed because, change, and I lost my passion. I lost my passion along the way. It was time to rekindle it. So I'm excited about that. Other questions?
Maybe talk a little bit about that conflict between being a service organization
Ooh, yeah.
and an organization that provides a product.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be giving a talk at Drupal. Oh, I can't say that yet. Yes, well, I have thoughts on that. So, one of the very interesting things for me at joining Pantheon has been to see the structure of the organization. So Pantheon's a very successful services company, or product platform as a product as a service, SaaS or PaaS or whatever acronym you'd like to use. Not a client service. It's not a build a site for a client. Sort of hi, like meet you. All right, there we go. Figure it out. Do it. Build it. Move on. And it's oftentimes people will say like you should only do one or the other. Like you can never be successful at both. No, it's not true. We're proof. We were able to do it. However, after sort of like stick that in your eye, ha ha ha, we could do it. I have to agree with it a little bit. It's hard to do both really well, even just down to the structure of the company, and you have to make a commitment. Like so, Lullabot has Drupalize Me. In order to make Drupalize Me successful, what they had to do was make it its own thing, and they had to put Addie in charge of it, right? And they had to say, Addie, you are just going to run with this. And she was in charge of content and marketing, and so through the course of running NodeSquirrel, I had many conversations with folks like Addie about managing these kinds of the conflicts, billable work. That's really helpful stuff, right? It helps pay the bills, helps pay salaries, helps all of the good things. I invested in this like moonshot idea that may or may not have legs. I don't know. It turns out a product needs a very different mindset than I think many of us are prone to. So as technologists, we like building things. Like, hey, all right, you're describing a thing, building it. It becomes very easy for us to sort of noodle around for a long time and keep like thinking that the solution, like the thing that's going to crack it, make it go to the next level, is to build something more on it. And it's not true. What a product needs is paying customers. And in order to get paying customers, you need a lot of marketing, you need some sales folks, you need, like, that has to be your focus. And we were really slow to realize that with NodeSquirrel. And in fact, like Ronan, who's the engineer guy, was the one who finally like said it in a way that I finally heard it sometime about 1.5 years ago. It's like, this doesn't need more engineering, it needs more users. It's like, oh, that's really succinct. Yes, you're right. Like, new features, we had the MVP, right? It was there. We had the branding, we had the website that sold the thing. There's so many more features we could add to it. And I think, we'll see them happen over time at Pantheon. It needed more people. And if you can, the sooner you can have that realization, if you are trying to do both, and realize that in order to do that, then it's going to require a commitment to staff marketing and sales people, more than engineers even, to try and find the right niche. And then that maybe has to inform the product in new ways. So put it together as lean as you possibly can. And then really, it has to sell. You have to sell it.
With your position at Pantheon, are there any traps that you want to help Pantheon avoid specifically?
Interesting. Possibly. Can you flesh out that question a little bit more?
I've just been watching Silicon Valley on HBO, and each episode is like, here's a classic startup trap, and they fall into it. Mm-hmm. It's a funny 30-minute episode.
Right.
So, yeah, any startup can fall into that trap of trying to build your own hardware. Any startup can fall into the trap of not having any salespeople.
Yeah.
Having too many salespeople. For where Pantheon is, do you have things in mind of, for a company of that age and size, here are the traps that are laying in front, and we need to not step in them?
one of the reasons I was really excited about joining Pantheon in the first place, actually, is I had the opportunity to spend a fair amount of time with Zach, and he's here at the camp actually. For those, and he's like probably down. He's down at the booth. He's being very unassuming. Just guy. He's the CEO of this rather important large company, at least to me, right? And had a lot of conversations with him about the way the company's run. It's now 5 years old, and so it's made it past a lot of hurdles. So I think the short answer is not really. I mean, be mindful of them, but I think we've already proven that we've made it through a lot of the traps, and there is a leadership team and a execution team ready to just take on the world. And I think it's a startup. It is still a venture capital, Silicon Valley startup. But it's got a little bit of maturity to it, and I think it has the right people in the right places to self-correct. I will be one of those people if that is necessary, but I don't have the sense that I'm walking into a thing that's like, oh, this is a mess. Very much the opposite. I'm really looking forward to learning a lot, actually. So, yeah. Cool.
Could you describe the process and maybe timeline going from you working solo yourself
Yes.
to Gorton Studios?
Yeah.
Multi-person team.
When I started out, again, I had that early big client that was this awesome client that I had to sort of assemble an ad hoc team for relatively quickly in order to be able to put it together. And that was successful, and I did that for a number of years. Occasionally, the big project would come along and have, all right, this is going to need more people than I can come together with, or than I can pull myself. So let's, you, let's do it. I did that for a number of years, and that was not uncommon, but it definitely wasn't an everyday thing that I was working with other people. But basically, one day, 2 or 3 years in, I was sitting down, wearing my pajamas in front of the computer and working on something, and I just had the realization, I'm lonely. Like, I'm workplace lonely. There's nobody here, right? Like, I didn't go off on my own to be by myself. I went off on my own to do better work. I wanted to do things. And so that was like the moment for me. It was like, wait, why don't I do something about that? I'm the boss. Like, I know it's just me, but I'll boss this guy around. And so I started reaching out to people, and I was actually able to find people relatively quickly that I really thought were pretty awesome. And the hardest thing was, after you found them, now figure out, can I afford them? And that was the super hard thing. And for that process, that probably took me like a year and a half or something like that. From the point where I was like, okay, I think I can get enough of this, to like, I actually made an offer, and it was like, nope, not going to do it. I was like, oh. But then I was ready the next time around. I cut my salary. I took out a loan. I got my brother happens to be an engineer in Boston and does stuff on kernels and things, and is really, I don't know, he tells me, like, I understand most of the words he says, but really not all of them. And he's by himself, and basically he's sitting on buttloads of cash. And he was like, I'll invest some money. I was like, all right, money. And then my own mental deal was, I need to be able to guarantee this person, this first hire, a year of salary. That was my own deal to myself. I can look you in the eyes and tell you that I'll have a job for you as long as I know I have the money to pay you for a year. And that was my own deal. I think that was probably a bit, that was good. I'm glad I did that. Now looking back, it's like, well, probably 3 months, because you're going to get new projects. As long as, like, once you sort of have a track record and you know that there'll be new clients and new work and things like that, a year is maybe a bit extreme, but maybe at the time, one person becoming 2, maybe a year is a good idea, honestly. 3 people becoming 4 or 5 people becoming 6, maybe we can trim it down a little bit, but yeah.
And what point did Drupal enter your story, and what effect do you think that had on you as an entrepreneur?
So Drupal came in, I started fiddling with Drupal at the Drupal 4.4, 4.5 range. And we did an early look and did it for a client, and actually, client asked us to build us an intranet, and we had our own CMS because everyone did. And we're like, I don't know, don't need our own, like we would have to change it all to do the things you want to do. Why don't we try one of these things? There's these things out here, right? Just grab one of those, install it. A first look at Drupal was like, oh, this is ridiculous. Nodes and taxonomy? Get out of here, right? I have a full-time job. I'm not going to pull out a thesaurus to figure out what you do. I gave it a really super cursory look. Shame on me. And it was like, go away. And we ended up implementing something else. And the client came back and said, all right, we love it, except for we want to make these 3 minor changes. So, all right, crack up on the code. It's like, oh, no, this is terrible. I'm sorry, we can't do 3 minor changes. That's going to be like all of the money in the world. This is not, it doesn't change. It doesn't change that way. You cannot change that to green or whatever it was. This is something just like, no, that's like coded 48 places in 17 different modules. It's like, no. And so we ended up coming back to Drupal a little bit more seriously, like, okay, let's actually take a technical analysis before we implement something for our client, and let's not get weirded out by weird terms. And so we picked up Drupal relatively soon after that and did it a number of times. Ali Mika, who's actually here, local in our community, has been involved with Drupal for a long time. She was actually super influential in both the first and second looks for us. And by the time DrupalCon Boston came around in 2008, we were starting to self-identify as like the people, somebody comes to us with a project, we're going to do it with Drupal, probably. Our early involvement with Drupal and getting, again, taking care of people, I think, coming back to that idea, we started giving back to the community, trying to answer questions in the forums and things like that, from the principle of like, we are using this, we should give something back. I don't know what we can give back, but all right, some modules and other things. Well, one of the modules we gave back was Backup and Migrate. Backup and Migrate became NodeSquirrel. NodeSquirrel just got me a bright new shiny future. Didn't see that coming, right? So again, just being a part of this community, a part of something much larger, and trying to be good in there, gave people favorable impressions, and that turns into opportunities. Opportunities are always interesting. Yeah. Cool.
Talk about the growth piece.
Yeah. So, specifically?
I've heard about it at the last couple of conventions sometimes. It's just like that you need to keep growing, basically.
Yeah.
This concept that, like, if you don't grow, people will leave.
Mm-hmm.
They want to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a really stable team for a long time. So, at the point of going into 2015, I had been doing it for almost 15 years. People on the team, some of whom are in the room, have been with me for 10 or 9 or several people for 10 years in a small team. Then have been there for 6 or 7. And so we were really stable. And I was like, you know what? Grow. Yeah, don't need that. Maybe I did know skills and I knew skills and services and clients and projects, but we became the grow metaphor, root bound. We should have grown in people, and that would have been I don't know, it would have been a different path. So I think I'm just kind of rambling.
Grow the people, you mean like get more people.
What's that?
You're talking about when you say grow the people, you mean bring more people in.
Well, I think I wanted to see it as grow each individual person, but it turns out when you're doing this work, there's always going to be some crap work, right? There's always some stuff that's kind of junky that you have to do. You have to take care of the clients. They've got the little things. I need to change this from yellow to orange. Oh, I don't know if that's a great change, but okay. And that's super menial work for someone who's really senior. And yet at the same time, that would actually be really helpful work for someone who needs to learn how to do this stuff. And they need to go through and like low risk work, like, all right, they got the orange wrong, or, oh, somebody actually needed to step in and tell them that's a colorblind thing. We did orange, we just failed accessibility. Okay, we can undo it. This is low risk little things. And bringing new people in to teach them these skills and help them have bright, happy futures is a good thing. It also lets your senior people mentor those folks and say, like, there's this thing called accessibility. Don't put blue text on red buttons, or whatever. You shouldn't do that anyways. But, yeah. So I do think in the end it does come down to, like, you do need to add people. Don't do it for the sake of adding people. Do it for the sake of making people's lives more fulfilling and interesting, and giving new opportunities to folks. Yeah.
You find that one of your staff members is being less than honest and underhanded.
Mm-hmm.
What's your approach there? Do you take them to one side and have a word with them and give them one more chance?
I was pretty fortunate to never have to deal with really sort of juvenile staff behavior. The few occasions where someone wasn't right became apparent quickly, and I think in those occasions I did a pretty good job of saying very quickly, this isn't right. Not necessarily always, and there's always gray areas and things like that, but something like that is always difficult. You have to take it on a case-by-case basis, and I certainly spent many sleepless nights, or tossing and turning nights about like situations not like that as dishonesty, but just like what's the right solution here. And I think always having a conversation with someone is a helpful thing, and the conversation might lead to a conclusion in the middle of the conversation, which is we're done, or it might lead to, okay, I see why you did this. Do you see why I'm concerned? Well, are we up for a second chance? So.
Combining a couple of your points here.
Mm-hmm.
First off, feel free to say no, but also
No.
in taking care of people.
Yeah.
What's the future of Gorton Studios?
You know what? One of the things that I think has happened very successfully is that the individuals who are part of Gorton Studios are all landing in great places. So Erica, who's in the back there, smirking a little bit, I'm going to call her out. She's started off on her own, and I'm actually really super proud of her. So she and Molly are starting up their own company. She just launched a new website called uscreative.works. And she's continuing to work with Gorton Studios clients and such. And so there's a collaborative relationship there. Lynn has just taken a new position. She's just waved a little meek wave. New position with August Ash, and she is, there we go. Lynn, what is your title? It's Director of?
Production Director.
Production Director. It's pretty fancy. She's going to be doing things that she's very well suited to, and she's going to be in a happy place. So Ronan is off to NodeSquirrel. Denise, who is not here and whose chai was sitting out here, good Lord, talking about people. She's running the show, and she's pretty well suited to that sort of thing. And she's going to do that for a while. We'll see. But I think the individuals around me are all in better places now, actually. And we'll see what happens after that. It's a trust fall.
This changes opportunity thing is like resonating more and more hearing this story. It doesn't seem like embracing the idea that change is going to happen.
Yeah.
Seems good for everyone.
Yep.
And stability is good, but there's always change.
It always change. Always change. There's never even the same project twice. You might have a process to do things, and you think that this is the way we do things. Over time, that process is going to stale, but you can't even fool yourself to think that this process is going to be the exact same as last time. And the more you try to hold that down, the more the edges are going to fray. Change is the only thing. It's the only thing.
Groucho Marx was asked what he thought was the good business practice. He said honesty and integrity. You can fake those two things.
Awesome. I don't know if everybody heard that. Honesty and integrity. If you can fake those two things, you'll do pretty well. It's nice. Awesome. Well, I think I'm going to just close this down because actually we're close to time. Thank God for questions. So thank you everyone for coming.